And we're going to get started. Okay, so welcome everyone to our United Policyholders Roadmap to Recovery, and this is a Q&A for current wildfire survivors. I'm sorry that, like Mark said, that we all had to meet this way, but we are here to try to help you get through this as best we can. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sandra Watts, and I am a project coordinator and instructor here for the Roadmap to Recovery program. I come from an insurance background. I worked for State Farm for 23 years, and I was in claims and claims management. Now I am part-time with United Policyholders. I also have I'm a claims consultant and expert witness for property claims as well. In case you're wondering, I am IICRC certified in fire and smoke restoration. So I am a certified technician for fire and smoke restoration as well as water. Because I have been giving you guys a lot of smoke advice and fire advice. And so that's my background. So nice to meet you all. For those of you who are new to United Policyholders, just want to give you a quick rundown on us. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is to be a voice and information source for consumers in all 50 states. We've been around for 30 years next year. Amy Bach, our executive director, who some of you may have seen in our first Roadmap to Recovery webinar. She is a co-founder of United Policyholders. And we go back to the 1991 Oakland Hills fires. So we've been around, we know what we're doing, and we are here to help you with your recovery. We are not for profit, not for sale. We don't take money from insurance companies. That allows us to be non-biased. We're funded entirely by donations and grants. Thank you to the Community Foundation of Santa Cruz County and the Napa Community Foundation for providing us with grants to get us started on this year's wildfire season. We also have a big volunteer corps of people like you who've made it out the other side of fires, as well as lawyers, public adjusters, CPAs, financial planners, and a lot of other professionals who have expertise in the disaster recovery and insurance arena, and they provide us with a lot of support and information. Okay. So this is the fine print. This workshop is intended to be general guidance only. This is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a claims adjuster. You're gonna see a lot of codes because I want to give you the information that you can use to advocate for yourselves. But anything that you have questions about, seek real legal advice. Also, we do have sponsors, attorneys, public adjusters, different people who can help you with your claim in our Find Help directory on uphelp.org, and we do not endorse or warrant them. However, we know them all. So we do our best to choose people who we trust and who we feel are professionals in their line of business. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right in. So we did get a bunch of questions in advance, and these are based upon those questions as well as questions I've been getting. I've been on the Facebook groups. I'm having a tough time keeping up, just so all of you know. This going forward is going to be the best way to get your questions answered because with the number of people who have suffered disasters, sadly, in the last couple months, I'm trying to keep up with my email and the Facebook messages and the phone calls, but I am having a tough time. So if I owe you something, keep poking me so that I can get back to you. But at some point, it's going to be hard for me to answer individual questions. Okay, so we're going to jump right in. I'm going to start with additional living expense questions first because we're getting a lot of those. These are obviously really pressing questions because it has everything to do with, where you're staying and what your resources are in terms of your insurance company helping you relocate. Okay, so these are some of the questions that I received in. My adjuster says I can live in my home even though there's visible ash and char inside. And then I'm going to address these as we go through. Is loss of power or water off-site enough to trigger ALE? Can I claim reimbursement for costs associated with staying with a friend or relative? And I haven't been paid anything for ALE yet. What should I do? Okay, so we're going to break down the language first. And this is sort of the most basic language, the most common language that's found in a lot of policies. I will show you some exceptions, but in general, when a loss insured, and for those of you who watched last week our How to Read and Understand Your Insurance Policy, you know that if you see something that's in bold or in quotations, it's usually defined somewhere in the policy. When a term is defined in the policy, that is the ruling definition. If something's not defined in the policy, then the courts have said you use the most common definition, so usually the dictionary definition. Okay, so when a loss insured, okay, fire, and let me tell you, fire is covered under all of your policies, causes the resident's premises, that's the place that they insure, your house, to become uninhabitable. Okay, uninhabitable is not defined in most of the policies. So I went to the dictionary, and that means unfit to live in, very broad. So in general, if these conditions are met, you'll be owed ALE under most policies, okay? There's some policies, notably farmers policies, that say that your actual property has to be damaged. Some of them don't, so let's go through it here. I guess I have the samples next, but let's talk about what makes a home uninhabitable, okay? There are different measures for different people. And in smoke losses, if you or one of your family members who lives in your home are vulnerable or sensitive to smoke, then the threshold for acceptable levels of smoke is lower, okay? Some people can take it, some people can't. And so I think it's important to communicate that information to your adjuster if you're one of those individuals who is vulnerable or sensitive. If you need to, get a letter from your doctor. Personally, I think that's pretty invasive, but if it has to be done, it has to be done. One of the things I think that's fair to ask your adjuster is what they think the threshold is and how is that threshold determined. I'm going to tell you that in claims management at State Farm, it wasn't really written down anywhere. They do have some operation guides that give guidelines for how to determine that, but really there's a lot of discretion on what is uninhabitable, okay? So I think that you should be able to ask them what the threshold is, how it's determined, have them provide that to you in writing if they're saying no. Ask them to address, especially if there's visible smoke and ash. Smoke particles, you know, they're known to contain toxins. So what are they going to do about that? And I'm going to go more into smoke in a little bit later in this program. Sorry, my dog is of course making noise. So one of the things I did put here is Civil Code section 1941.1. And the purpose of that code is for tenancy, for habitability, for tenancy. And it's here, there's a lot of stuff here. The main thing is I want you guys to be able to know that there's different ways to measure habitability, and you can use any and all of them. But you know, they're talking about water, proofing, plumbing, gas facilities, water supply, okay? Heating facilities, electrical, you know, and all these things. So I think that while this civil code doesn't directly address ALE under insurance policies, it is one measure in California of habitability that I think you can use, okay? Okay, so what about loss of power off premises, okay? And these are sample languages. Again, if you weren't able to join us last week for How to Read and Understand Your Insurance Policy, I highly recommend you go back and watch it. It's on our website. Under the 2020 California fire pages, if you scroll down, there's a link to it. Not the most interesting of topics, and I'm sorry for droning on about it, but really important information. So this is a State Farm policy here. And the one I quoted before, it's very common. It comes from what's called an ISO policy. So this is common. Loss insured causes the resident's premises to become uninhabitable. Cover your increased costs. It doesn't say anything about the loss has to happen on your property. It just has to say a loss insured causes it to become uninhabitable, okay? There's no limitation for off-site. So here is an example of farmer's language. Very different language. Covered, accidental, distinct, and demonstrable physical loss or damage to the dwelling, okay? That makes that part of the dwelling where you reside uninhabitable. So this policy here specifically says that you only get additional living expenses if your dwelling itself is damaged by the insured loss. So it's totally different. I will say that Farmers sells several different policies. So just know that if you have a Farmers policy, this might not be your same language. This is just the one I used. So you have to read it yourself, but no, some of the policies say that. And if they say that and you have no damage except for no water and power, you're probably not going to qualify for additional living expenses, okay? So what qualifies for additional living expenses? In most of the cases, those expenses must be incurred. It means they need to be spent. Someone wrote in and said, what about if I stayed with family and friends? What can I do there? I think that you can reimburse them for reasonable expenses, but you have to actually pay them. If they let you stay for free, just out of the kindness of their hearts, then I don't think that the insurance company probably owes you anything. I would say, hey, look, I want to buy them, a nice gift, a case of wine, whatever they're into, to reimburse them. And I think they would have to pay you for something like that. Now, if you were just staying in regular places, your rent for a temporary hotel or housing, if you had increased food costs while you had no kitchen, if you have to drive more because you can't stay in the area, the extra miles would be allowed. And then all these things, moving costs, pet boarding costs, things like that. In general, if you have a bunch of livestock, they're probably not going to pay for that. It's a really gray area. You have a good argument. I know a lot of you that I've spoken to in the Santa Cruz Mountains have, chickens and a goat or something like that. It's interesting. It's always worth asking for. So don't. Obviously, I have a pet. Of course, she's quiet all day until I'm on the webinar. Ask them for a list. They're required to provide you a list, but this is just a general overview. Okay, so I'm moving fast here because I want to have time for questions. These are basic smoke questions. I'm getting a lot of these. What if my adjuster says I don't have any damage? Do I have to wait for my adjuster to approve smoke remediation work before I start? How do I get them to reimburse me for smoke testing or industrial hygienist services? Do I have to use the company that my insurance company told me to use? And what if my estimate is higher? And also, this one I should have just put estimate instead of restoration estimate, because this applies to both total losses and smoke losses. I'll go through that. So first one, my adjuster says no damage. My first question, and this seems ridiculous, but it is, did your adjuster actually inspect inside your house? Because I have spoken to a couple of people, one who's an ALE adjuster was driving by every day, weird, and said it looks fine from the outside, so I don't imagine that there's anything wrong on the inside. So I'm going to stop right now because I see we have 19 questions in here. Mark is trying to do what he can to get them through here, but I will go through and try to address what I can. Mark, are you able to see those on there?
Yeah, here, Sandy, do you want to hit 2 ALE questions as we leave this section? So I know we were transitioning there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Which ones?
So here are two that I think are applicable pretty broadly. So can ALE be used to put a tiny house on the land while the house is rebuilt, or any similar type of structures or vehicles?
Um, yes, it can. Most cases, it's to the discretion of your insurer. Um, some of the policies have, most of the policies say it has to be incurred. But what you can do is try to negotiate with them. And a lot of them will negotiate with you. Um, and for instance, if if the place you can find, you're owed to maintain your standard of living. Okay. And I would recommend, especially if you have a total loss, if you're in this for the long haul, try to find a place that is comfortable, that is like what you used to live in. The caveat being, if you have a money limit on your ALE and you're worried about running out, then you can go ahead and downsize or get a trailer or something like that. If you are one of the policies that has no limit, I would recommend not doing that. But there's no harm in asking your insurer and say, look, the place I can find is $4,000 a month. It's going to take at least, a couple years. How about you cash me out? So you can negotiate with them. The only thing I'm going to say is get it in writing. Get it in writing, because when your adjuster disappears, you want to make sure you have something in your hand that lets that continue. Okay. So go ahead. And a lot of people did that after the Paradise and Sonoma County fires. What's the other one, Mark?
Yeah, here, let's go through a couple more ALE.
Okay.
So this person wrote in and asked, no kitchen. What if it's a little kitchenette without adequate tools? Does that mean you can't eat out? This is what they have been told.
Well, I think just be reasonable. I think if you're in a hotel with a little kitchenette and all you have is a microwave and a pot or something like that, then I don't think it's reasonable. You get the increased cost to maintain your standard of living. So you don't need to eat, top ramen and microwave popcorn. I would work with them. I don't think that they, and if they're saying that you can't eat out with a kitchenette, then ask them to find you a place with a kitchen like you used to have. That's what I would do. Just be mindful, if you have a low limit on your ALE, you might have to do some trade-offs.
So this next person, they paid their friend $100 a day to rent their RV, and their adjuster asked for their friend's social security number. Does that seem reasonable?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Do they ask for the social security number of the homeowner, who, I guess they do when they rent a house, but I think that's ridiculous. How many days did you stay there? Because 1099 reporting, I think, is $600. So if you stayed more than, if you stayed more than 6 days, I think technically they have to issue a 1099. I think it's invasive.
Okay. So this one kind of goes to contents and ALE, the intersection here. They asked about replacing documents, birth certificates, passports, etc. Contents or ALE?
Contents.
And I believe here, let's keep moving forward then on smoke, and we'll group the next section. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'll do is at the end of smoke, I'll check back in with you and we'll hit those so we get them at the timely time. Okay. Okay, so back to my adjuster says no damage, and we're talking about the adjuster sitting outside the house, looking at it, saying there's no problem inside. That is unacceptable. We'll talk later about their duty to investigate. But if the adjuster actually inspected inside, was there visible smoke or ash or char? Where was it? Take photos and document it. Because I think that it's well known that smoke needs to be professionally remediated. And I see them starting to come around a little bit, so keep at them. You guys are putting a lot of pressure on these carriers to address these, properly. And I saw a couple today of very good things where the adjusters are changing their position and coming around to what they should be doing. But document them. If they're talking about, and we'll talk about this later, smoke odor, okay? Odor does not exist without a source, okay? So the source of your smoke odor is caused by smoke particles, particulate. If you guys have heard me, smoke particles themselves measure from 0.4 to 5 microns. And a micron is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. It's tiny. The naked eye can only see down to about 50 microns. So you cannot see actual smoke particulates with the naked eye. What you're seeing when you see black things, you're seeing smoke, ash, or char. So most of them they're just products of incomplete combustion. That's all you need to know is that. But when you have complete combustion, then the byproducts of smoke and the particles are very, very small. So if they're saying, you know, you have odor, we don't pay for air, know that the odor is caused by smoke particles, and the first step in odor removal is to remove the source, which means remove the smoke particles that are causing the smell. Okay, in a few situations, the odor is going to still be outside. I think you can tell pretty easily which is the inside and outside. So the rest of you also who have been communicating with me, whoopsie, ask your adjuster if they're saying no damage. What are your credentials? You know, how did you make this decision? Sorry, I'm getting some light on me here. How did you make this decision? And are you an industrial hygienist? Are you ICRC certified? Are you somehow otherwise qualified to say that my house is free of smoke and smoke byproducts? And if they, you know, if they just say they can, then ask them to provide something that states that they can guarantee this home is safe to reoccupy. Keep at it, okay? Keep at it. The only time that I'm going to say is that if there's no noticeable odor to most people and no visible smoke, ash, or char, you're going to have a tougher road. If you're very concerned, and we'll talk, this is one of the other things, the next question, now it's 2 questions down, but about getting them to pay for the hygienist report. So hold that thought, okay? Do I have to wait for my adjuster to approve smoke remediation work before starting? No, you do not. This is your house, okay? This is your home. You get to control what happens to it, okay? Most policies contain language, and I'll have a sample next, and it's in the loss settlement portion of the claim that talks about we'll pay X and Y and we'll do all this, or the reasonable and necessary amount actually spent to repair or replace, okay? So check your policy language. Most include this language. The most they're going to push back in on is the reasonableness of it. So be sure you're prudent in your spending, that you can sort of justify. I always say pay for it as if you were going to have to pay for it yourself. I'm not going to guarantee that they're going to pay you. But in my experience, the only time I ever really see them deny it, if you actually paid to have the work done, is if they never had any opportunity to inspect the damage, okay? If you just went and fixed it and don't really have good support for the damage, then you might be in trouble, but otherwise they're gonna have a tough time not reimbursing you. Unfortunately, this is only really helpful for people who have the funds to start the work themselves, which is unfortunate because they're supposed to be helping you. Okay, here's the sample language, okay? And this is the loss settlement provision. I'm going to talk about insurance code 2051.5, but there's some similar language in there. But this is the part. It's talking about here, you know, we're going to pay for this and we're going to pay up to the limit, reasonable repair. But the reasonable and necessary amount actually spent to repair or replace the damaged component parts of the dwelling or separate structures. And I put this one in because this one's a little bit stronger language. So some of them it's even better language. Okay, how do I get them to pay for a certified industrial hygienist or testing? I would say if there's visible smoke residue, kind of weird grammar there, sorry, but they are refusing to pay for remediation, then I would absolutely throw a fit until they do it. They need something to support their position. They are required to conduct a reasonable investigation. So if you have visible smoke, ash, or char, or a very strong odor or something like that, and they're refusing to pay for professional remediation, then I think they have to pay to test the house to support their position, okay? My opinion is you can test yourself, and if it shows damage, you submit right back in and you say, look, you guys said there was no damage here. I hired a hygienist. Here's the damage. Reimburse me for this cost. They're going to have a tough time. They might fight you, but in the end, I think you're going to win. That I think is the way to go. I was going to say something and I just lost it. I want to talk a little bit about the insurer's duties. They have to, within 15 days, begin any necessary investigation of the claim. And there's other insurance codes that talk about reasonable and diligent investigations. An adjuster walking into a house with a tissue is not going to pass the test of a reasonable investigation. While we're at it here, I want you guys to get familiar with the California Fair Claims Settlement Practices regulations. Their insurance code 2695. Unfortunately, they're kind of long, but once you start getting through them, I've given you a lot of pieces, but once you start getting into them, there's a lot of information that really supports your position and will help you get through these claims. Okay, do I have to use their remediation company? Farmers, people out there. No, you do not. And here is the language. Again, this is the California Fair Claims Settlement Practices regulations. This is 2695.9B. They cannot require you to use their individual. This is the one that gets me. No insurer shall suggest or recommend that the insured have the property repaired by a specific individual or entity unless that referral is expressly requested by the claimant, and then they have to give you all this information in writing. To me, farmers showing up with Service Master is a violation of this part of the regulation. I think that there's no way that they can say they're not suggesting or recommending that you use them, especially when they say, well, farmers can come in 2 days, so we're only gonna approve it if you can have somebody get there in the next 2 days. We're gonna cut off your ALE otherwise. That to me is even worse than suggesting or recommending, okay? So this is where you get that ammunition for that. And then the last one in this section, what if my estimate is higher? And this is going to apply to smoke people with remediation companies and for total losses when you get down the road, okay? This is really, really important because when you have a situation where the insurer or someone they hire, okay, if the loss is settled on the basis of a written scope or estimate prepared by or for the insurer, and that's my highlighting, and I wanted to bring that to your attention because sometimes the insurance companies pay someone to come out, write an estimate, and then they say, forget it, your estimate is, you know, we're just ignoring it because we have a independent, you know, comparable bid that says that they can do it for this amount and therefore you have to do it for that amount. It doesn't work that way. If they hire someone, it's the same as if they did it themselves, okay? So they have to give you all the documents. Yeah, I've got to verify that it's, you know, reasonable and all of that. But if you turn in an estimate that's higher, there are 3 things that can happen, and that's it, nothing else. And number 2 can only happen if you ask for it, and I don't recommend it, okay? So here are the 3 things that can happen. They either pay the difference between the written estimate and the higher estimate that you turn in. Number 2, again, I don't recommend it and it has to be triggered by you. They have to give you the name of somebody that can make the repairs for the amount of the estimate, and they have to be able to do it for that amount up to the standards. Let me just tell you that the last 2 people I talked to who said they could never find anybody who would do it for the insurance company amount, they finally just said, forget it, I'm gonna ask you, you know, your contractor to do it. The contractor came in and promptly doubled their bid. And so to me, that's ridiculous. I would have just had a fit then. The third one, and this is the one that's most likely going to happen, is reasonably adjust any written estimates prepared by the repair individual or entity of the insurance choice and provide a copy of the adjusted estimate to the claimant. This means that they have to tell you every line item. If they have to go through it line by line. They can't just say, oh, well, we don't like this, we don't like that. They have, whoops, sorry. What happened? There we go. Sorry about that. They have to go line by line. And if they deny, if they just say, we're not paying for this, you can ask for a denial for every line. If they say we don't pay for air scrubbers, if we don't pay for ozone, ask them for a written denial for that, just like anything else, because they have to have some sort of a justification for that. And they have to get it from the policy or the law, and there is nothing in the policy or law that says that they don't pay for ozone or air scrubbers. We'll get to that later. Okay, Mark, do you have some questions that are along that smoke loss lines?
You know what, Sandy, I was actually pulling up a code section, but let me see if there are any specific to code. We have a couple more ALE, but here, I'll butt back in a second here.
Okay. Okay, some of these I'm seeing. Jennifer, you're saying our insurance company has refused to provide a list and will only give us the policy copy. We can find the code. Is that 2071, Mark, I think?
That is 2060. I'm actually sending that one right now.
2060. Oh, okay. Is that the one you were looking at? Why can't we use the maintain standard of living argument for water contamination? You can. And then I'll hit ALE as a second home later. Okay, I'm going to move on. I'm trying to see some of these. Okay, some of these we'll hit further in the program. Okay, so let's hit a few total loss things. And then I'm also going to point out that next Wednesday at 5:30, we're going to do a full smoke / partial loss webinar. We're going to get in deeper on the smoke and partial losses. And then on the 8th, which is the day after, we're going to do a full webinar. Amy Bach's going to do a full webinar on total loss dwelling claims. Okay, so we're gonna have 2 more that dig directly into the issues of smoke. I'm going to have some restoration company bids. I'm going to have some samples of hygienists reports to show you kind of how to read them, what's good and what's not good. So this is one of the things where there's so much information, it's hard to just give it all at once. So sign up for those next 2 webinars. Okay, so for the total loss, can I choose not to buy or rebuild and just pay off my mortgage and keep the land? Okay, the answer is yes. I'll get into it more. What if I don't know if I want to buy or rebuild? That's okay. I'll get into it more. If I decide to buy somewhere else, can I use all of the money from all of my coverages? Yes, and I'll get into that more. Sorry about the light, guys. What are the first steps? And then what if my coverage limits are not enough to rebuild my home? Okay, get into that. Okay, so for almost all of these questions, 2051.5 is the key. Okay, it hits on a lot of these. Make sure if you Google it, sometimes people come up with the 2007 code, and it is, I'm going to move a little bit here. It's now, it was clarified in September of 2018. So make sure that you have the right section. I'm having a hard time with the light here. That you have the right section. It's this time of night and it's working at home, people. Okay. So, what insurance code 2051.5 says, sorry, I'm going to go somewhere else here, is that what they owe you, sorry, time of day, what they owe you is the cost that it would have cost to repair or replace the home you lost, okay? So for those of you with a, I'm sorry, it's in my eyes. For those of you, and I can't close, I have a glass door, so I can't close it. For those of you with total losses, I'm just gonna turn this off for a second. For those of you with total losses, the important thing, and you're going to hear me say this over and over, is you're going to need to know how much it would cost to replace the one you lost, plus code upgrades if you have that coverage, up to your policy limit, okay? That's what they owe you. What you do with it is another thing, okay? So we'll get to that. So this is the same thing. In most cases, you're going to need an estimate to determine what it would cost. The only time I think you're not going to need to get your own estimate is if your policy, if your insurance company decides to pay you the policy limits. If they pay you the policy limits, you don't need to do anything else. Okay, however, and some of you might know this already, they pay the actual cash value until the home is repaired or replaced, okay? So think about car insurance. And if you buy a car for a certain amount of money, like say you pay, you know, $20,000 and you drive the car off the lot and crash it, actual cash value is what you just paid for it a few minutes before, okay? But if you drive it for 10 years, okay, and then crash it, and now it's only worth $2,000, that's actual cash value. Now the law has changed in California, and actual cash value for the purposes of your dwelling is replacement cost less depreciation, okay? So your insurance company is going to have to come up with an estimate for replacement costs and apply depreciation. The law and the policies allow them to pay only the actual cash value, okay, replacement cost less depreciation, until the repairs are done or you've bought a new property, okay, or up to the policy limits. Actual cash value is what you actually lost. So you can take that money and you can do whatever you want with it. You can, you know, just pay off your mortgage, put it in the bank, be an apartment dweller, move to a second home, live with your kids, whatever. The only thing that's going to happen if you don't replace or rebuild is you can't recover that depreciation, okay? Because you only get it if you actually spend the money. And then in some cases, the code upgrade coverage. Most code upgrade coverage says you have to incur it, okay? And it would be the cost that it would have cost to bring the home you lost up to code, okay? And you determine that amount with an estimate, and you can take it and buy a new house, rebuild anywhere. That has to be incurred. Now, some of the carriers are voluntarily paying it. I'm seeing less and less. I've seen they're kind of constricting these days, but so you would not be entitled to collect all that money if you chose not to rebuild or buy, okay? This is just a sample of a policy saying that you have to, that you don't get the money until you repair or replace it, the second amount of money, okay? Buying versus rebuilding. We have a whole webinar recorded on this that we just did a few months ago for the people in the Paradise client losses. No going into it. You don't have to decide right now. You can decide later after you've done some research, because the process is almost identical. Your insurance company is still going to have to do an estimate. You're going to have to reach an agreement with them to know how much it would cost to rebuild the house you lost. You're going to have to know the code upgrades and all of that, okay? So the first thing you want to do is aim for that. This is mainly total loss, people. You want to make sure that the insurance company's estimate is correct, okay? And we will talk about this quite a bit. And if you want the, we have a whole 2-hour webinar on how to do this, but their estimate needs to be correct, like line by line. Like, what kind of floors did you have? How high were your ceilings? What kind of, wallpaper did you have? It needs to be correct because that's what they're going to compare. Like say you get it and you're like, well, this isn't enough to rebuild my house, and you get a contractor's estimate or a scope writer's estimate. There are people you can hire out there, not public adjusters. These people, you just pay a fee. Some of them are fixed fees. Some of them are like 1.5%, 1%. And they give you a line item estimate to send to your insurance company. They're very effective. But it needs to match. The insurance company needs to be able to compare them and say, well, you know, this is a different house, you know, so you want to do that. Okay. So you want to aim for an agreed upon scope of loss, and we'll get more into that on the total loss thing. Okay. So people have talked about underinsurance, and underinsurance is a huge issue. Again, if you want, we do have a pre-recorded webinar on underinsurance and some remedies. It's very hard because the law in California says that the homeowner has the responsibility to choose both the coverages that they buy and their coverage limits. So there's just a few, if they made a mistake, if they told you you had plenty, there's a few things. So if you want that underinsurance webinar to look at, send a request to Carolyn at info@uphelp.org and she'll send that to you. But this is something that's new as of January 2019. You can combine your coverages, and I'm not going to, just note this down. If you have not enough money to rebuild your house, but you've got some money available under your other structures, dwelling extension coverage, you can use that money, okay, for the house. Now you have to have the structures. You have to have lost them. Like say if you don't have any other structures, which is weird, it wouldn't probably happen because it's like fences and pools and, you know, driveways and things like that. But you can apply your coverage B, your other structure coverage, to the rebuilding of your house. It allows you to combine it. So that's a new one. That's a really good one. Okay. We've got some more. I've got just a couple more, and then we're going to go right into all the questions. Why is my mortgage company listed on the payment? What do I do with the check? And will my insurance company cancel my policy if I pay off my mortgage? Your mortgage company is listed on the payment because both the mortgage documents and the policy require it. It protects the lender's interest in your property, the money they lent you. So you have to do it. It's a pain, I know. What do you do with the check? You have to call your lender. Each one of them has a different system. Usually ask for the lost draft department and ask them for a package. Some are easier than others. On totals, they're probably going to dole it out a bit at a time. And then, will the insurance company cancel my policy if I pay off the mortgage? No, they won't. And we recommend keeping the policy until you know what you're going to do. You might need some liability coverage if somebody falls on your property. You might need it if you're going to rebuild eventually, because getting insurance is getting harder and harder. And I did see somebody ask if this is mainly claims, but somebody asking if you guys are going to get dropped because you're in a fire zone, and the answer is probably. We're working. Everybody is aware of the insurance crisis in California, so the Department of Insurance and the governor and all that are trying to do what they can to fix the situation. Okay, payment questions. I get a lot of people asking me, can I accept the money that the insurance company is trying to pay me? Yes, you can. There is no downside. We recommend, you should write to them and say, I received the check, thank you. However, I will be sending in estimates, or, I don't even know if I agree with this amount or not. You just say, that's fine. You just want, and technically you don't have to do that. But if you wait a really long time between accepting the money, you could get into some trouble there. But write to them, say, look, I've got the check. Thanks. I'm going to get my work started, but I'm going to send you estimates. Okay, we've got some contents questions now. Should we take the money now on items that we can't or won't replace until after our home is rebuilt? Yes, go ahead and take the actual cash value payment. The inventory process is the most painful process in all of this because you have to relive everything that you lost. I'm so sorry. And one of the questions that we always get is, do I have to do a full inventory? And the answer is probably, you probably will. And it's awful. On our website, we do uphelp.org/samples. We have an Excel spreadsheet that can kind of trigger your memory. You have to change things to match what you lost, but it will help you. Okay, if I replace an item with a fancier item, will they cover the cost? Nope. They pay you for like, kind, and quality of what you lost. So if you decide to upgrade, say for instance, you have like a stereo, and you want a nicer one, they'll pay you for whatever the new model is of what you lost, you cover the rest. I'm getting a lot of questions about 75% contents advances. The voluntary claim handling guidelines came through. They're only 25% and they are still voluntary. Keep asking. To me, I think they're in a better shape. If you say, hey, give me 75%, I won't submit anymore. Just keep on that. There's nothing we can really do to make them other than just keep putting pressure on them and telling them that, in these total losses, it's too hard to do a full inventory. Okay, so some coverage questions. Let's talk about refrigerators and refrigerated contents, floors damaged by leaking fridges, and we don't insure air, which we touched on a little bit earlier. Okay. These refrigerator claims are driving me crazy, okay? I've been telling people over and over that the insurance carriers are wrong in their position. I finally called an experienced attorney and said, am I losing my mind? What's going on here? And he assured me that our evaluation of the coverage for your refrigerators is correct, okay? So let's walk you through this. I still haven't seen anybody who has a denial for their refrigerator claim in writing. When you get one, if you want to send it to me, I will try to help you guys with a response, but let's walk through it. Personal property, named peril. Again, watch my How to Read Your Policy video to go through this in detail, but personal property, it's usually named peril basis, 16 causes of loss specific. Power interruption isn't one of them, but guess what is? Fire. Fire is one of them, okay? The adjusters get confused because some policies add coverage back for food under it's like refrigerated products or power interruption or freezer food. There's a whole bunch of different little additional coverages. Okay, those additional coverages are for situations where there is no other cause of loss. Say for instance, PG&E does a rolling blackout, right? And your power is out because of a rolling blackout for 5 days and everything rots. That's power interruption, okay? This is fire, okay? Fire caused the loss. California uses, it's called predominant cause, but the most important cause of the loss determines whether or not the loss is covered, okay? A lot of these adjusters come from other states. They have no idea about predominant cause, and so they don't know how we do things. I did see somebody today who said their toddler turned off their refrigerator on the way out. So that's probably a situation where it wouldn't be covered because fire is not the cause. But if fire caused your power to go off, caused the food to rot in your refrigerator that is beyond cleaning, that's what set the loss in motion and your loss is covered. I'm going to keep hammering until they change their minds, okay? The other thing is ask your adjuster what investigation they did to determine the cause of your fridge loss. A lot of them are saying it happened on a different day. I saw one that put it in an email. They did it all wrong, but they put it in an email that said the smoke caused the refrigerator to stop on a different day. It's like, well, how did they determine what day the refrigerator went off, and what did they do in their investigation to determine why the refrigerator failed? Because the answer to that is nothing. Okay. This is the jury instructions. This is what, if you were on a jury and somebody had a refrigerator claim, this is what they would tell you. I just put this in here. You can look it up. I'm not going to read it to you. But it basically says that if it's excluded, the insurer has to show you, prove that it is excluded, and the owner has to show that it's, that the most important cause was a covered loss, okay? The most important cause here is fire. Okay, communication questions, and I didn't get to do many other slides on this, but my adjuster refuses to provide an email address. Unacceptable, go to your agent. The thing that I have been saying to people is that some people want to communicate with their adjuster's personal email address. I don't recommend it, or do it in conjunction. There we go, we're back. In conjunction with the generic email address. Okay, so myclaim@csaa.com, claim docs at farmersinsurance.com, State Farm fire claims at statefarm.com. Those generic email addresses go right into your file. Okay, if you're emailing an adjuster personally and they disappear, the chances of them taking that email with them is pretty high. Some of these people don't work for State Farm. They don't have any State Farm for their insurance company. They don't have any loyalty. And I've already heard of people who have disappeared with, you know, inspection reports and so forth. Returning the calls, send an email to that generic mailbox complaining about it. They do have 15 days to respond to calls or emails. I know it's not reasonable. Refuses to explain the basis, my coverages or basis for denial. That's also in the regulations, that they have to provide the basis for the denial in writing, the policy language and or state law that they rely on to deny the claim, and there's some Department of Insurance language and other things there. So they do have 15 days to respond. If you send in an estimate, they have 40 days to pay or deny. So it's 40 days from when you submit the estimates. And I know that that's a really long time. I think feel free to push for sooner, but under the regs, that's how long they have. They can't, if it's a situation where they're not responding to your estimates and they're threatening to kick you out of your temporary lodging, that's when you have a fit. They can't, if they're not responding to estimates that say that you have more damage than they say, they can't kick you out of the house. They can't. They'll get in trouble for that later. Okay, and the last one is, I'm on my third adjuster. What do I do? These are the fair claims practices, so become familiar with these. If they're not able to pay or deny your claim in 40 days, they have to send you a letter. What do they need to make the decision? How long? And they have to do that every 30 days. And they can't just say, we're still thinking about it. Here's the help. I'm on my third adjuster. It's insurance code section 14047. It's new as of October 3rd, 2019. So it's last year. If you're on your third adjuster, you get some things. You get a written status report, establish a primary point of contact for the insured, and provide the insured with one or more direct means of communication with the primary point of contact. Okay, and they shall be available to respond to inquiries, okay, related to your claim. Other people can work on your claim, but they have to be the point of communication. They have to answer your calls. They also have to, if you ask, transfer you to their supervisor, okay, who has control over the file and some authority with claim handling, okay? And they talk here about what a primary point of contact is, and it means a first party real or personal property claims adjuster or team. So that's how some of them are going to get around it. Employed as, so they have to be staff. They can't be independent adjusters. Okay, so that might help some of you. I've heard people that are on, you know, adjuster after adjuster. Okay, this is the end, and then we're going to go all the questions, get it in writing. If it's on the phone, put it back in writing to them confirming. Be professional, be concise. Respond on your end. Try not to, I know it's hard, but try not to, you know, vent your frustrations or emotions to them. It's very emotional, but In the end, it is a business transaction. We have so much on our website, okay? So go to our 2020 page. DOI, most of you guys know about the Department of Insurance. You can submit a complaint online. They will try to be helpful. These are our funders and partners, Napa Valley Community Foundation and the Community Foundation of Santa Cruz County. So thank them for bringing this to you. Sign up to be added to our mailing list. And then these are our upcoming webinars. Okay, next week, I'm gonna do this one, partial loss smoke claims. We're gonna dig deep into them. Amy's gonna do the dwelling portion of your claim next Thursday. The next Q&A is October 14th. If you send it in advance, they'll get on the slides. And then there's gonna be one specifically geared for renters and what renters are entitled to under their policies on the 15th, okay? So I'm gonna stop share. I'm gonna go in here and I am going to look at some of these.